Welcome to the Roost Podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Bowhunter. And now, your host, Josh Grund.
Me and John were sitting and we're talking about things to talk about. I actually, you guys might notice a different background right now. I actually moved recently, so it's been a pretty hectic few weeks. Hopefully all this audio and everything's sounding good, because I literally just set this up 5 minutes ago. But with that said, turkey season's coming up. We're starting to finish unpacking and getting my house all set up. And I was going through some of my turkey gear, and it's getting me fired up, man. I started watching some videos the other day. Dude, it's coming, man. April 12th, we'll be in Kentucky turkey hunting.
That's right, for the opener.
Yeah.
I know I'm getting pretty fired up as well. Pulling out some of my stuff, got my turkey vest out, got my calls, starting to annoy my family with practicing.
Yeah.
But yeah, starting to get the itch for sure.
Yeah, I know I told you, I pulled out my tote, and like an idiot, I literally, turkey season ended, and I didn't even touch my tote. Whatever was in there was just kind of stayed in there. I don't know if it was like I put something away wet or something, but there was also, I left an apple in my vest, which was disgusting. By the way, there was like all kinds of mold growing like in the like back pouch of my pack. Yeah, a bunch of my calls like kind of fell apart too. Like my crow call, my owl call fell apart. I don't know, just sitting in there wet. It just kind of, and it won't go together tight. You know how those calls, like they kind of press them together and you can pop them apart and mess with the reed and stuff. It like, they won't even seat. Like they'll go in and out, but it's just
so that moisture got to
super loose. Yeah.
And warped it almost.
So I don't know if I could put some wood glue on them or something like that, but I don't even want to mess with that. I'm just probably going to get a few new ones. But luckily I didn't just throw the tote in my truck and head down to Kentucky. You know what I mean? That would have been a disaster. Yeah. But we figured today we'd just kind of talk about, we're just starting to think about turkey season. Maybe some of you guys have been fired up about it, since before deer season ended. But what we're thinking about, what we're looking at, getting ready, what we're, kind of some lessons learned from last year. We're going to talk about our trip that we got planned in Kentucky. We're excited for that, and a couple other things. But, yeah, you got I know you learned something last year. You ended up buying a new pair of boots here recently, didn't you?
I did. Yeah. Doing a bunch of hill climbing and side hilling. The footwear that I was wearing was not up to snuff, so I had to make an upgrade.
Yeah.
The boots I had were like a hiking boot, but they were very soft and great for long distance. Not so good with scaling.
Not a lot of like ankle support, or like, I know like my boots that I wear, they're Solomon's and they're pretty good. They got just a real stiff sole. Like it's hard to bend the toe up, and that helps a lot when you're climbing hills. And then it also has like these like plastic pieces kind of woven into the ankles, like on the left and right side of your leg. And those just kind of work really well to help, keep your foot from doing this when you're side hilling, dude. And, some of those hills, especially when you're turkey hunting, you're running and gunning so much. It's not so bad like if you're sneaking into a deer stand or something like that, because you're kind of just moving slow and you're taking your time, you're pausing a lot. But if you're like trying to move on a turkey and you're moving quick, it pays to have some really nice, stiff, high quality boots running around, especially when you're dealing with those kind of slopes and stuff like that, for sure. But
yeah, definitely. I know last year I noticed, my feet were sore, but not in the sense that like the bottom of my feet were sore. It was more like the sides.
Yeah.
And like the bones.
Yeah. Well, that might just be you're getting old, dude.
Could be, but I know, the boots I had were so soft. They were like tennis shoes. They were boots, right?
Yeah.
But they were so soft that, like I felt like I was going to roll my ankle at any point. So I made an upgrade. I think I have now two sides of the spectrum. I've got those really soft boots, which are ultra comfortable, super light. I went to the other extreme on my new ones. I went stiff.
Super stiff.
Super stiff. So hopefully they'll be better. Shoot, they almost feel like ski boots. They're so stiff.
Yeah. Well, make sure you wear them in, break them in before you just start hiking around chasing birds.
I've got a couple of miles on them now, but all flat ground. So I think that's on my agenda here leading into the season to, put them babies on and log some miles.
Good. Be good for your cardio too. I know I've been doing that. That's one thing I think I really I think I was in pretty decent shape for like early season in for deer season when I was down there, but last year when we went to Kentucky, kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but last year when I went to Kentucky, I hurt my back before I went. And I know I was like running and trying to like really lose some weight and get in really good shape before I went down there. And then I hurt my back like maybe 6 weeks before. And then I just kind of lost all of that. You know what I mean? So I know I struggled a lot, just fitness wise, running around down there. So that's one thing I think a lot of people, it's one thing if you're going out to like Colorado to elk hunt, I think everybody knows like be in shape, right? But going turkey hunting to Kentucky, it's not really something like, oh, you better be in shape. But I think it's super important, right? I think it's something that might be overlooked if you want to be effective and do things different than a lot of other people are doing it. But we'll get into talking about that later. But I think,
No, I agree. The fitness has two, pieces to it. One is you're effective, so you can traverse the ground. But then I think on the second part, you have more fun.
Yes.
If you're suffering, things aren't as fun. You know, you're more worried about catching your breath and, worrying about the suck.
Yep.
So if you're in a little bit better shape, I think you enjoy it a little bit more.
That's absolutely true, yeah.
I know I've been running, which is good, right? Running hills is good. I think it gets your endurance up. When you do kind of, climb some elevation, you catch your breath a little bit faster, and then you can get going.
I think that's good, and doing leg workouts, dude. I've been doing a lot of like leg presses and stuff like that at the gym lately. And your core too. Your core is so important, especially with like deer hunt, dude. Carrying those stands in and stuff like we do, those heavy backpacks. Like having a strong core is like imperative. But having strong legs and strong thighs and strong ankles and strong all that, your base when you're climbing hills, I think is super important.
So that's the one thing I learned is running is great, but I'm stepping up my game this year and adding stairs.
Yeah. Oh, I remember you were saying that. Yeah, because like running flat ground doesn't translate. It just doesn't.
It didn't help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Outside of catching your breath.
Yep.
So I've been incorporating stair work. Climbing stairs. A lot of them.
Good. Fuck. Heck yeah.
That's gonna help.
Good. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for this turkey season, man. I think last year we learned a lot down in Kentucky. I think I still have a few really good spots around home to hunt. I know you got your spot up there in God's country that has ton of turkeys. What are you doing right now? Like to kind of, so I know Kentucky opens like a week before Ohio. I don't know. Are you going to be out opening weekend in Ohio? Are you trying to, locate some birds right now? Like I know what's your plan for like Ohio?
Yeah. In Ohio, I hunt the Northeast, so up in Ashtabula County.
Yeah.
So that comes in late. Ohio has two openers.
Mm-hmm.
It's the majority of the state, and then the northeastern section. So that's where I'm at. I don't have a ton of property, so I'm kind of limited. I do have a little bit of, I got a couple of cameras that are still running. Uh, one
That's crazy to me.
one just pinged, and I got a couple of toms. Pretty cool picture. So I'm excited for the Ohio, but outside of planning, not a lot on like my private because it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Either they're there or they're not.
Yeah. Yeah, I plan. To be honest, dude, I haven't done any preparation around here or trying to locate any birds or anything like that, or at least see. I usually like to put cameras out on a couple of the farms I have just to see, like, where the biggest toms might be, or if I even have a tom that year. Because some years I've had where there's just no birds on that farm. But so I'll be doing that here soon, maybe the next few weeks. Maybe I know we're hanging out next weekend up at your property, so maybe the weekend after that, towards the end of March, the third weekend in March, I'll start getting some cameras out and trying to locate birds on some of my private property. But yeah, I think I'm excited. So I know we're going to Kentucky. On the way back home from Kentucky, I'm going to stop and hunt in southern Ohio, where me and you and Bryce hunted 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Probably for opening weekend, kind of the same way. And I'm kind of excited about that. I'm kind of excited to go back to some of those places where you shot your bird, and see, if it's still, kind of the same thing going on, or if there's a bunch of birds down there this year. Because I've struggled down in southern Ohio for about 3 or 4 years now. It's been tough for me to get on a bird on public down there.
I wonder, yeah, and it's worthwhile to get down there and do a little scouting because I know when we were there 2 years ago, they burned a lot of it.
Yes.
So to see how the environment has changed, could be pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, we can talk about that a little later. But what else are you doing to kind of prep for the season? What else are you kind of getting into, or sort of starting to dabble in?
Yeah, so I think the last week or so, I've been getting on my phone and some Onyx, doing a little e-scouting. Reminding myself of the access that we had found last year. Kind of putting together a plan of, we're going to start here, see what happens, but then putting together a plan B, plan C, plan D, and kind of just, being systematic with it and doing a little bit of e-scouting.
Yeah, dude, I think having that's a good point. Having multiple plans, especially when you're going on a short 4-day, 5-day trip like we're going on. And because what's going to happen when we get down there in Kentucky is, plan A is going to probably not happen. Like, we really lucked out last year that we were like the first people at that place and we got our spot and we were able to double up on those birds. That may not happen, and we have to be able to pivot and move and have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, and a plan E, because there's so much competition and pressure down there. I think which we can talk about later as well. But yeah, doing some e-scouting. I've been looking at some things too. Is there anything specific? Like, I know I've been just kind of like looking over a lot of the locations that we've already hunted, just kind of trying to, maybe remind myself of those locations, or, maybe try to look at them in a little different light. What are you looking for e-scouting wise? Are you looking at some new locations or some spots close by? Like, I know we got an Airbnb, so are you trying to find stuff that's a little closer? Like, what are you looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's a short trip, so you want to maximize your time there. Um, we hit, I think we're initially going to hit historical spots, um, but we got to keep branching out. I've set some new pins um, to explore. Maybe we get lucky. Maybe we get a couple of birds, um, or the opposite. We get there and we strike out, and we got to figure something else out.
Yeah.
I know the last, our mantra of the last 2 years is finding the sign, right?
Mm-hmm.
So historical spots are great, but when you do get there and there's nothing there,
doesn't really matter.
doesn't matter, and you gotta, cut your losses and get out of there.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time if there's no birds there.
Yeah. I think that's super important. I think, yeah, dude. I mean, it's like that mantra, I think, has done really well for us. I think it's pretty apparent that, when you find sign, there's going to be birds there, and you're probably going to do a lot better. I don't know how much time we've wasted walking and hunting locations where, well, it was good here before. There were definitely birds here last year, and but the sign's not there. You don't hear any birds. There's no feathers. There's no scratchings. There's no tracks. It's like, just let that go. That was in the past. Move on. Mm-hmm. Find a new spot. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's all part of having multiple places, multiple plans, making sure that you're set up for, we might get down to that spot where we doubled up. That's our plan. We're going there opening morning. There's probably going to be more birds on that ridge. They've been there the last 3 years I've turkey hunted there. But maybe they won't be. Maybe we get there and it's like dead quiet that morning and we're just like, shit, now what?
Yeah.
And having, like, it's so easy, I think, to get to a spot where, you've been going down to a spot for a few years, you're pretty confident about something, and just to, like, kind of get comfortable and rely on that happening. Kind of like I've done that here at home too, where you get so confident in, kind of like what happened to you last year, right? You were so confident in how your rut was going to go. And guess what? It didn't happen. Where we kind of quit looking for those new spots or those new ways of looking at things and all that, good stuff. And we just get comfortable. So, yeah, trying not to do that can be hard sometimes, and takes time. Takes a lot of time to sit down and e-scout and scout more property and more land and new spots. Ideally, what we want to happen is to kill 2 birds opening morning and then spend the rest of our trip, checking out a bunch of new spots. But who knows? That's probably not going to happen. I know we have at least, 3 or 4 locations from last year. I got a spot that I'm kind of excited to hunt that I saw a ton of turkeys at during deer season. So, there's going to be birds there somewhere. So we do have a lot of locations kind of lined up and we're just going to kind of go through them. 4 days isn't that much time. But hopefully one of us can put a big old gobbler down at some point down there.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you this. Jumping into different areas, looking for sign, finding turkeys. What's going to be your game plan with the pressure? I know it's opening weekend.
Yeah.
So Saturday and Sunday. How do you typically deal with running into other hunters?
Yeah. So I think that's what we found last year, I think, well, let's go back 2 years. I learned my lesson 2 years ago at the property where we ended up doubling up at last year that we need to be there at 3 a.m. because I got there at 3:30 last year and there was a guy there already. So what did we do? We got there early as heck. We were the first people there, and we had success, right? And we had success early. And down there on the WMAs, you're not allowed to shoot more than one bird per WMA. So once me and you both shot a bird there, we had to go find other birds other places. And that was probably a blessing in disguise, even though it was a lot more work and a lot tougher, and we really struggled. I think we really struggled because everywhere we were focusing on was like, just there were people everywhere, man. We were driving down, some of these access roads, and there's a truck at every pull off. We would take an hour out of our day to go driving into some place that we thought, oh, this looks really good. And there was a freaking Taj Mahal of camping tents with 8 trucks. And they're like, yeah, we've killed 12 this weekend, and it's like, there was just so many people on Saturday and Sunday down there. And, most of them were from Ohio, believe it or not. A bunch of us Ohio boys going down there, which I don't blame everybody for doing that, obviously. But we got to do something different. We got to be smart, and we got to try to avoid people and do things that are different than what people are doing. And I think the way I've been kind of thinking about it lately is, like, if you think about how a lot of that public is set up, all those pull-offs are at the top of these ridges, right? They're either at the top of the ridge or at the bottom. And most people probably aren't leaving the top of that ridge. They're probably just walking. Those ridges are long. Some of them are a mile, 2-3 miles long, and it's easy walking. But if you go left or right, it's a workout, dude. It's a drop off. There are probably benches way down there. They're hard to find. You don't know what you're getting into. So I think a lot of people are probably just parking on top of those ridges, and they're just walking out those ridges, and they're just calling periodically, running and gunning, trying to get a bird. And that probably works, Saturday morning if you know where a bird's at. But those birds are going to catch on really quick, I think. And I think that's, something I want to kind of look into. If we can locate birds in the evening, roost a couple birds or something like that, and we kind of have an idea where they're at, is getting like level with them or on a bench next to them. I think my experience last year, that last day, I could not, and this could just be that specific bird, but I was on top of a ridge. There was a bird down below me, and I couldn't get him to come up on top of that ridge for my life. And the place I was hunting, there was a truck parked there every day we were there, except for that Tuesday. And I walked down there. How many times do you think those guys called to him all weekend? And he knows, I ain't going up on top of that ridge. That's where, I got busted there or whatever. And I think we heard a gunshot over that way one of those days. So, just trying to think outside the box. That's kind of why we took the days off. We want to be there Saturday. We want to be there Sunday. You're going to learn a bunch. You might luck into some birds. But we also want that Monday and Tuesday off too, because I think 85% of the pressure just leaves, right? They leave Sunday evening, and dude, Monday morning, it was like there was nobody there, dude. There was nobody there. We had the place to ourselves. Tuesday morning was even like better. Like there was 0 people. Yeah. So I think that'll be key, especially during the weekend, is, finding places that, there's no low pressure, or maybe there was a guy there this morning. If we're rolling in at 10 o'clock, there's boot tracks there, there's vehicle tracks. That doesn't mean I don't want to hunt it necessarily, but let's come at it differently than we think every other normal person would. Maybe drop down and side hill it with them nice new boots you got. Yes. And when we're talking,
I would agree that the fact that somebody took a crack at him isn't going to discourage me from going down that same ridge and trying to get him. I know, like you said, the Monday and Tuesday when the pressure died, we were still finding them. Still finding birds. We didn't pull it off, but like you said, taking a different approach or coming at it from a different angle
like literally a different angle, right? Like not like not like theory or metaphorically, like literally a different angle from, because if you think about a bird, a lot of those birds are roosted, you know, they're not roosted at the very top of a ridge. They'll be down,
Yeah.
a quarter of the way, halfway down the ridge sometimes. I mean, it depends, but you got to think how many people they hear calling up on the top of those ridges. Like, just how many hens are just walking the tops of those ridges calling, you know what I mean? So if you just drop down 200 yards, it's going to be a pain in the ass, but that might be all it takes for him to think, oh, this is a real hen. You know what I mean?
How many times were we down there on the top of the ridge, hearing them gobble, and us trying to close the distance?
Yep.
And then them deciding, you know what, I'm not pursuing us, right?
Going the other way, gobbling.
And either go the other way or they drop down.
Yeah.
I feel like it happened a lot. Yep. And then they'd hang out, halfway down.
Yep.
And then they would just slowly it got quieter and quieter because they're moving away.
Yeah. Yeah, and so and that's what I noticed. Like, you think I don't know, maybe it's just me, but you look at how steep that stuff is, and you think oh, if I'm a deer or a turkey, I'm gonna want to run the bottom or run the top, but that's the opposite of what they're doing, dude. They are side hilling. That's all they're doing. Mm-hmm. Every turkey I've seen, during deer season when I was down there hunting, I saw a bunch of birds. They were all just halfway up the hill, scratching and feeding and blah blah blah, So it's nothing to them. It may seem like an ordeal for us to, side hill and climb down and up those mountains, but for them it's absolutely nothing. It's what they live in. It's what they do every day, and that's where they're safe, honestly, because I don't think anyone's doing that. So, I think if we get on a bird, that might be the thing to do, right? Say it's noon and we're running and gunning and we're just walking down the top of a ridge and we strike up a bird. I'm thinking about that bird that remember that one pull-off we were at last year, and we were walking down that ridge in the morning and it got light and we didn't hear anything. And by the time we got all the way back, there was a pond and a big old tree and a little field.
Oh, yeah.
And then that bird gobbled way off to our left.
Yep.
And then we chased him, and then we both passed out sleeping next to that tree.
Yeah, because he wouldn't
move. Something like that. I think instead of just chasing him down the ridge, maybe the key is to all right, let's just drop 200 yards down the side of this hill and call from him, as long as we're in the same bowl, right?
Yep.
Let's just do that, and maybe he'll side hill it right to us, thinking we're a real bird or something like that. Yep. I think that might be a tactic to try instead of, calling to him from up on top of the ridge. I think that might make a big difference, man.
Definitely.
But besides that, I mean, what other things? So let's talk about just getting ready for turkey season. I feel like we're skipping ahead. We wanted to talk about just some other things that we're doing. The one thing I've been doing is just getting my gear out, right, checking on all my gear, making sure it's all working right, making sure I have everything I need, but also pulling your calls out and practicing your calling. I know when I first met you and you put a diaphragm call in your mouth, it was dude, nope, you just let me call, buddy.
yeah, definitely.
And how much better you've gotten. And last year you were calling really well, and that's just because of practice. And I know every year you pull your calls out a month before turkey season. You're practicing all the time. You drive around a lot for work. You probably take them to work with you and call. And how important that is to practice, And I think there's been a lot of years where I feel I don't need to do that. And the first time I pull out a mouth call is driving to the woods opening morning,
Yeah.
And that's stupid. I need to pull my calls out. I need to buy get a few new fresh ones and start practicing and start, because you want it, man. You want it to be a second language. You want to have confidence.
Yeah.
I think if you have confidence in your calling and you feel like, oh, I'm a good caller, I'm confident in it, you're gonna do a lot better, right?
Yeah. I think the easiest thing to do is to make it convenient for yourself. Um, Put one, maybe it's not your go-to diaphragm, but have one in your truck. So
Yeah,
you're driving, you got a half hour to get to anywhere. Throw that sucker in and do 10 minutes.
yeah,
Um,
I
it,
agree.
it, it makes a difference, just being able to move the air, and kind of find that niche to where it doesn't sound bad.
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
What So I know last year you bought that like copper call because you're like, I want it to just ring through them hills. Like I want
Yep.
everybody to hear me. Have you changed your opinion about like that approach to calling down on public lands this year? Like, what do you like? Say, we split up one day. Like, what are you gonna do? Say you're just walking down a ridge at 10 o'clock in the morning. Like, what's your process gonna be?
Yeah. No, I wanted that copper call and I got it, and I think I'm even more excited to use it this year than
Yeah.
when I first got it.
Okay.
It paid off, both here in Kentucky and in Ohio. Um, I'm going with it again.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah.
So like here's what I was trying to get at. Like I think one thing I tend to do a lot when I'm hunting public land and I'm like getting to the point like I haven't heard a deer, I'm getting kind of frustrated. It's just like calling louder and more often. And I think that's the opposite approach on public land, right? If you think about those birds that we killed opening weekend,
Yeah.
like how much calling it was kind of quiet. It was like I barely called. I called
Yeah.
once while they were on the tree, and I called like once or
Mhm.
twice after they landed and they were in our lap. So I think,
Well, all right. To answer your question, I want that copper, and I want to let it ring and be very, very loud and reach out, you know. And if I get a response, um, I want to say that I'm good. You know what I mean? I want
okay.
that sound to get out there,
So you're
and
you're wanting to use it more as a locator call.
locator, but I located them, but they located me too.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like, if I'm calling and he responds with a gobble, well, he just responded to me. Um, he knows where I'm at now.
yeah,
So that, following up and, really hammering it, to your point, I don't think I'm doing that. I think I'm going to switch and starting to soften it.
I
Um,
got you.
so that initial, broadcast, hey, I'm looking to meet up with somebody. And I get a response, and maybe he's, 700 yards away or on the ridge over, and he responds. I got success there.
Yeah,
I located him, he located me. Um, I'm going to tone it down now. I don't need to keep hammering, hammering, hammering.
yeah. I think what I want to try to do this year is just, I love hunting public land. Like I hunt up here on these like 80-acre farms and stuff. I have permission to every year, and that's great. You can't really run and gun. You can't really run around and find
Mm-hmm.
turkeys like you said. You get there in the morning, they're either there or they're not, and you might be walking out of the woods at 7:45.
Yeah,
Depending. But I think what I want to really try to focus on this year down in Kentucky and in Southern Ohio is kind of just letting it come to me, letting it happen as opposed to like the really aggressive, like covering ground and just like screaming off the top of these ridges every 200 yards, like we did a lot of last year. I think that's something that a lot of people do. And if we're talking about doing things different than, a lot of these other hunters are on this pressured land, just kind of like, I mean, and anybody who turkey hunts knows you sit in one spot long enough, like birds just gobble on their own. You're going to hear them. And then just kind of working at it and kind of just letting it come to you and trying to stop forcing it so much, like what happened to you last morning, right? You tried to force it.
I did.
I think just letting it happen and just chilling, I think it's good to cover ground, but I almost think I kind of want to take a lesson from like the deer hunting that I've done, the lessons I've taken from, this mobile hunting that I've done for the last 10 years, and how, I've had years where I'm just like, I moved like too much. Like I just need to sometimes you just got to pick a spot and stick with it because it's a good spot and it's going to happen. You just have to have some patience. And I think taking a lesson from that and some of the things that happened to us last year and kind of applying that to this turkey hunt, like I think about how many spots we drove around to and how many miles we covered. I think about like that one afternoon where we walked like 5 miles to just like every 150 yards. I don't think that's going to do it, man. We might get lucky and you might run into one of them birds that's just super fired up and hot and wants to come walking right in. I just don't see that happening. I think we're going to do a lot better if we can roost birds at night and we know where they're located. I think we need to be a lot more aggressive at roosting birds at night. I think we kind of took the lazy way out, driving the road and just hooting. I think me and you need to like pick a ridge, separate ridges every night and go down them and try to owl hoot and get a bird to actually respond. And I think killing them off the roost. And if that doesn't happen, find sign, like you said, and just sit and put in time, and maybe don't even call for an hour, just listen. And then maybe the afternoons are the time we just strike out and try to, make something happen. But at least till 10, 30, 11 o'clock,
be patient.
Be patient, be in a good spot, just let it come to you. And I think we'll see a lot more success. But what else do we want to talk about? So we're going down to Kentucky. We do have some other things that we're kind of planning on, doing a twofer, killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah, we're going to make the most of our time.
Yeah. It might have something to do with deer hunting. So even
it's
during
always on my mind, right?
Yeah. So what we're doing, and this may be a lot, but I know we talked a little bit about it in one of our last podcasts, but we're going to start running a lot of cameras down in Kentucky, just to try to learn these properties a little more, learn about the quality of bucks that are running on them.
Yep.
Because for the last 2 years I've been deer hunting down there, it's just like, yeah, it's Kentucky, there's big deer, but what should I even hold out for? If a 100-inch 8-pointer walks in front of me, is that stupid to use my tag on him? Even if if I got 2 1-week trips down there a year, is that so? At least knowing the caliber of deer that's running around on some of these chunks that we're hunting, I think will be really cool. And I think we do a whole podcast on that strategy, but we're gonna, most of these places we're going to turkey hunt are places we plan on deer hunting too. And we're going to be running around with some cell cams and some card cams in our packs, in our turkey vests, with that as a secondary agenda, to make sure we get some cameras up this spring and we can kind of monitor some of these deer throughout the summertime and see, just kind of see what they're doing, man. I'm excited about that a lot. I know we have 3 cameras down there right now on 2 different properties.
Yep.
And we're going to make it kind of a point to go pull those cards and check them and maybe refresh those batteries and kind of maybe, rearrange them a little bit or something like that. But I'm kind of really excited to see those
It's going to be awesome. Yeah. Christmas come early, right?
Yes.
But yeah, no, we've got tons of pins. We've got, benches where we've seen scrapes and rubs, but that's all you saw was scrapes and rubs, right?
Yeah.
So to throw a card camera on it, and get some more intel, who's making those rubs, who's making those scrapes, is going to be exciting.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I want to focus on. I want to focus on putting cameras on those benches that we think are close to like bedding areas. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll find a fresh, big, car hood kind of community scrape or something to hang a camera on. Probably not likely. Those aren't super common. We might luck out and find one of those, but I think we're going to do the best by finding like those real beat down deer trails that are side hilling it on a bench. And we know there's like, an old clear cut down that way. And there was a ton of scrapes here last year. And maybe there's, some rubs on that bench or something like that, even though it's summertime. Also, I want to be looking for acorn trees too, right? Because I think we're going to try to get these cameras to run through at least, till when acorns start dropping.
Yep.
And
so getting pictures, through May, June.
Yeah.
I'm less excited about that.
It's not going to help you too much, yeah. And they don't really have antlers anyways.
Yeah, but when we do go back to check them, doing double duty.
Yeah.
Are these acorns dropping? And if they are, hopefully somebody's been, visiting that we'd be excited to shoot.
Yes.
Showing up.
We have a few on camera from last year that are slops that I would love to get on camera. So one of the chunks that me and John hunted last year, where one of the there's another public land hunter down there, Logan. I brought him up in one of my videos. I think we've talked about him in a podcast too. He found that big 10-pointer. He found his sheds like maybe like 2 weeks ago or something like that. Just massive, giant deer. So he's alive. He's still there. He was nice enough to share where he found them and pictures of it and everything. So.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. But we've got 2 other really good spots where we're getting pictures.
Yep.
It would be really cool to find the sheds of a couple of those deer that we, got on camera.
Yeah. You found a nice shed last year, man. It's something to make sure we're looking around for them.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for them.
The other thing is, dropping cameras on public land, right? There's a stigma about it. Some guys just won't do it, because they're going to get stole or they're going to get tampered with. I think we've both accepted that, it may happen. We have yet to encounter it, but I'm sure, the more we throw out there,
it's bound to happen.
The likelihood of it happening just goes up.
Yeah. That's why most of the cameras we're going to be throwing up are $35 cameras,
Yeah.
Which, so if it gets stolen, it's like, all right, I guess.
So be it.
Yeah. Cell cams, we may throw a few of them up down there as long as the laws haven't changed. And if those get stolen, it's like, not like they can use them, like it's just trash to them. Like,
yep. They're just going to be a jerk and ruin it for us.
Pretty dumb move. But, and you're definitely going to run into that, but it is what it is. And I think the rewards definitely outweigh any, negative things that may come out of that. But
definitely.
Here's one thing we can talk about. I would love to do a podcast where we just talk about, the strategy. Maybe we do that after we come back from Kentucky. We kind of talk about our whole strategy of like where we placed our cameras. Like we could talk about specific camera setups that we had and why we placed them there. I think that'd be really fun. But to kind of come back to turkey hunting, it is 60 degrees out today. Next week's going to be in the 70s. like all week, and I don't see any like really cold snaps in the near future.
Mm-mm.
Kentucky, it's like 70 something right now. 74, 75. Last year, do you remember when we were down there? There was not a lot of green on the trees. It was kind of
No.
barren, right?
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to be like pretty green by the time we get down there? Like, dude, we're a month away and it's like
Yeah.
70 degrees out.
So with it being 70, I mean, I'm trying to replay last year what the weather was like. Um,
I mean, it was
well,
nice last year. That first morning was cold.
yeah.
But it was like, it was hitting 70, but I think it was stayed colder longer. We had some like
The
pretty,
evenings were very cold, still very cold.
yes. Yeah, that's true. But I don't know, it may change a lot, dude. If we have like a really early spring and we get down there, um, you know, who knows what part of the mating season those birds will be in at that point.
Yeah.
I think we got to keep that in mind too. They may be henned up. They may be past that point. Who knows? But it'd be kind of cool to have a little more green, to just have a little more cover, be able to move around a little bit. Because in the mornings, dude, like trying to get close to them birds on the roost, it was like, remember that first morning? Like we
Yeah.
were scared. We like wouldn't move very close because like we could see 300 yards through the freaking
Yeah.
woods. So if we had some green leaves on the trees and be able to like you hear a bird and just know he ain't gonna see you and just get as close as you can, get to that 80-yard mark, I think we'll do pretty
Yeah.
good too. Especially on them hillsides and stuff. I think a lot of them birds just see you, moving
Yeah.
through the woods in the morning and stuff like that. But because I feel like the year before that, when I killed that Jake, on like day 6 or something when I was down there, I feel like it was really greened up when I killed
Hmm.
that bird. I'd have to go back and look at some of them videos, but yeah, just makes it easier to hide, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, you can, like you said, be a little bit more aggressive and get into different spots and
Yeah.
be hidden.
So the only other thing we haven't really talked about is patterning your gun,
Yes.
which I
Very
think is
important.
so important. Even if you're shooting the same loads that you shot last year and the same setup that you shot last year, still good to make sure, just go shoot your gun once or twice, make sure nothing's off or anything. Your gun sat in your, gun safe closet, got knocked around, pulling other guns out or something like that. You
Or
never
maybe
know.
somebody moved.
Yeah, maybe somebody moved, which I definitely, who knows, my guns got packed. I have no clue, you know, um, what could have
Yeah.
happened to them. But even if that's not the case, if you're looking to, if you're like me or John and you just want to try new shit every year and new loads and see what works different,
Hmm.
just patterning your gun is so important. It is so important for turkey hunting. I'll still say to this day, I talk to so many people who just like, what? It's a shotgun. You just point and shoot it. Like, and
Yeah.
then you miss because you don't know what your gun's doing out at 30 yards, out at 40 yards, out at 50 yards. You killed
Yeah.
that bird at 70 yards last year. You remember that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Like,
And I think your point is patterning your gun isn't just 20 yards with a
yes.
little, turkey head, printed on a sheet of 8.5 by 11.
Yeah.
It's shooting at 20, shooting at 5,
Yep.
the possibility of being, 5 yards is a
Yeah.
real possibility. Um,
Especially if it's really green when we get there. Like, it's
do you-
absolutely a possibility.
where do you aim? Do you aim high, low? How does your shot, how does your pattern hit? I know it's going to be way tighter, right?
Yeah.
Um,
A lot of
and
people
then,
don't think about that. Like at 5, 10 yards, depending on what you're shooting, dude, that pattern might be this big. And if you're just shooting like a pin or like a, like one of those True Glow sights or something on the front of your gun, dude, I've missed birds inside 10 yards like that before because it's like shooting a bullet almost, and you got to be right on. That's where you're right. Shooting your gun from multiple distances, because how many times have, like last year when we were patterning, remember you were like, oh, I'm good at 20, but at 40, like it's not even hitting any. Like I don't even know what's happening. Like just making sure your gun does what you think it's doing is so important. And the only thing that really sucks about that is depending on the load you're shooting, god damn, it's expensive, right?
Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching.
Just throwing money away. But I think, if you want to be an effective turkey hunter, and especially hunting on public land when, you may have to take a 60-yard poke at a bird. And if your gun can do that ethically, and it can do that because you've patterned it, shoot, dude, you're going to be successful. But if you've never shot your gun past 30 yards or 20 yards, like, you don't have any business taking a shot at 60 yards, I don't think. Even if your gun could do it, but you don't know what it does. You're just spraying and praying at that point, which I think is it's not the way to go. So just making sure your gun's shooting good. If you're shooting new loads, if you've got a new gun, you got a new turkey choke or something like that, I think that's super important. The other thing, dude, I'll say this till I die, I think a red dot is the shit. Like a holographic red dot sight, I think, is the best thing you could put on your turkey gun. I would never hunt without it anymore, man. I love it. You got one last year, didn't you?
And that was the first time I've ever used one.
Yeah.
Forever, I was just, a bead guy.
Yeah. The front bead only.
The front bead only. And, I shot a bunch of turkeys with it, and it worked great. But moving on to the red dot, is just as enjoyable. I really enjoy it. That's the other thing is going through your equipment. Do you have a spare battery? Heaven forbid you go out there and the thing dies.
Yep. I always make sure I carry spare battery. That's absolutely important. But where I think the red dot is so important, like, yes, I killed many turkeys with just a bead on the front of the barrel. All those turkeys were within 20 yards, right? But like, technology's gotten to the point where, like we said, killing birds out to 60 yards is pretty common anymore. It's not so common with a shotgun with a bead on the front, though, because you're shooting patterns that are pretty tight. And in order to get a good ethical pattern that's killing a bird at 60 yards, think about how tight that pattern is at 20 yards. And being able to have that like really good supreme accuracy that red dot or that holographic red dot gives you, I think is super, super important. I shot, the front and back True Glow sight for a long time, and it just covers up the whole bird. You can't see, really what you're aiming at half the time because they're like glowing in your face and all that stuff. Just that little tiny red dot, and you can change how bright it is and how small it is and all that stuff, I think is, and you still have the whole sight picture. You can see the whole bird. I love it. So that's my tip of the day for you guys. If you're looking to do something new this year, get yourself a holographic red dot. They're sweet. Kind of expensive, but they're not like too crazy expensive anymore. Like you go with like a Vortex or, there's a whole bunch of different brands, but they're like what'd you pay? $250 for yours, probably. Something like that.
Maybe not even that much.
Yeah, so definitely something to look for. But man, I'm just pumped. I'm gonna, like I said, I got some calls and stuff that I gotta buy since half of mine got ruined. Getting my stuff all set up, ready to go. I'm gonna pull some decoys out, make sure they're all looking good. If I got to pull some paint out and touch them up or something, I'll do that before season starts.
So you had a bunch of your calls get ruined.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: were you happy enough with them that you're just going to jump online and buy a replacement, or since you're starting with a relatively clean slate, are you going to go a different route. Try a different brand now that you have the opportunity to, you know.
Yeah. That's a good question.
You know?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I like that owl hooter, but I I'm always down to try new owl hooters. That thing did work for me pretty good in a lot of situations. I got a lot of birds to I roosted a lot of birds with that owl hooter, but um I wouldn't be opposed to trying something a little different. That crow call, I've never really had luck with my crow call that I got. I don't want to name names or companies, but I'll probably get something different than a different brand than that crow
Mm-hmm.
call. Um, Besides that, like my diaphragms and stuff, I'll probably stick with. I've used hooks for years, and just because they fit my mouth good and I can run them really good. There's other brands that I'm sure make really good calls. I got a small mouth, and I need a smaller diaphragm. Something's not so big, like those Woodhavens. I can run the Woodhavens kind of good, but
Mm-hmm.
man, they're big, and I don't like having to buy a call and like trim the back end, because when you trim the back end, they seem to fall apart a lot quicker to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if you're like you got one in your mouth all day long, running and breathing, and just soaking in your spit pretty much all day. I feel like they just fall apart so much quicker. So to buy one that just like fits good to start and you don't have to do any kind of modifications, I think is kind of important to me. And those hooks, custom calls, and they're like cheaper than anything on the market too. They're like $8 a call pretty much. Um, they're a smaller diaphragm, and I can run those pretty good. So I'll probably stick with those, to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might
I
buy
know.
some. I might buy some different cuts and stuff, and see what do something a little different in that regard. But for the most part, stick with those.
Yeah, I know. I know you've talked about this before. That for me and for myself, I'm relatively newer to the diaphragm world.
Yeah.
And you made this point to me that I need to practice, but try different diaphragms until I find the diaphragm for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think maybe I'm not all the way there yet in trying different ones, but for a newer guy like myself, speaking on diaphragms, you know, continue to try different brands, but then once you find your go-to, you stick with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
You did something kind of cool last year at the Ohio Deer and Turkey Expo. Didn't you buy like a Cluck starter pack or something like that? It was
yeah,
called.
yeah,
And
and
Cluck's kind of interesting because their calls have like different tensions or tightnesses of the how
yeah,
the reed is stretched across the frame. Um, so there's like tight, there's medium, and there's like loose or
low,
whatever, low.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's kind of cool to get like a pack of each of those, and then you can like run all three of them and see which one like sounds the best coming out of your mouth. And then if the low runs best for you, there are certain brands that all their calls are low, and you don't necessarily have to stick with Cluck. You could go, maybe I can't think of any right now, but like maybe Spur. They're a lot of their brands are kind of like that. You can
yeah.
find what call works for you based on like that specific parameter, which I think is kind of interesting. It's something I never really thought about until we talked to those guys. But because that's really true, and like different cuts, people can use
So
different
once you
cuts
find,
better.
yeah,
Yeah,
once you find, the tension that works for you, um, then, then you can branch out and buy different cuts of that tension
yeah,
to change the sound.
yep, yep,
But you're still, the air that you're producing is making the right sound.
yeah,
And at that point, then you can change the cut to alter the sound, but you're producing, a turkey sound
exactly.
versus, a bad sound.
Yeah. Well,
you don't have the right tension.
And the more you try different calls, like I know there are certain cuts that I can run a lot better than other cuts, depending on what type of call I'm doing. Like, for some reason, I know like ghost cuts. Every ghost cut call I've ever bought, which is like the little circle cut in the middle, they sound like shit, dude, coming out of me. For some reason, I just can't run them very well. But like for, specific, like if you're purring or if you're, doing loud yelps and cutting, like I know the bat wing or the V cut, like I can run those really well, depending on what I'm doing. So learning that, aspect about how how you call, I think is important too, especially in an actual turkey hunting situation, because I'll know, oh, this is the call I purr with and this is the call I cut and yelp with, specifically. Very rarely is there like one call that I have that I just run that one all day long and never pull a different call out to do something different. So yeah, and like I said, just having confidence in it. Having confidence in the calls you're using is so important, just like anything else. Having confidence in your tactics and all that stuff, it's going to just make you a better hunter, keep you out there, and just keep your spirits up and all that stuff, and make you make better decisions, I think, too. But yeah, so yeah,
on the next podcast, we'll let everybody know what you went with.
Sure. That
make
works.
Purchases, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna start looking. I gotta,
a little bit of homework.
Get some of them coming in here pretty soon. Yeah, but yeah. So I guess we'll leave it at that. Do you have anything else you want to kind of bring up?
No. Turkey season is here. Welcome back, everybody.
It's coming, man. It feels like it today. I was out swinging the golf club earlier today. It feels like it already, man.
Yeah.
It's only like 58 degrees, but I'm wearing a t-shirt and shorts. And in that sun, dude, that sun's like cooking.
Oh, feels good feels good.
Yeah, dude. So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening again. I'm excited for turkey season. Also, you may notice we're both wearing some pretty sweet hats. These are not for sale yet, but let us know in the comments if you would be interested in purchasing, some Buckeye Bowhunter hats. We may be able to accommodate that. So we just want to kind of know how much interest is out there. But with that said, thanks for tuning in, John. I know we've both been super busy lately, so it's been really hard to make this happen. And, promise you guys, we're trying. So hopefully the next one won't be so long between. But, we'll hopefully kill a few birds down in Kentucky and come home and kill a couple too.
Yep.
So
sounds good.
All right. We'll see you guys later. Thank you for tuning in.